Welcome to Decoding Devy, episode 21. I am Brandon Haye, and you can find me on Twitter at HayB3. And this podcast is found on the IDP Guys network on YouTube. So now that the draft is over, we're going to start looking at Devy Rankings. I have redone my top 150. In this episode, I'm going to go over my top 50. I will have my full list linked in the video. So you can go ahead and look at that, but we'll do the top 50 today. So here's the top 10, and we'll just kind of get started. One, Bijan Robinson. This is pretty standard in most Devy rankings. He's shown what he can do in his freshman and sophomore season. He did get injured last year, but he showed, he has the power, he has the speed, he can catch the ball at the backfield. He's done this on subpar Texas teams, so with hopefully the better Texas offense, he can possibly not get as many touches, be more efficient, but he still is my number one Devy player and is going to be the running back one 2023. Second for me is where it differs from some people. I have Jahmyr Gibbs, number two. He transferred from Georgia Tech to Alabama. He's shown great ability on a bad Georgia Tech team. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He even returns kicks. I really want to see him on a much better offense. So this transfer to Alabama should be great. I know Alabama usually kind of splits reps with running backs, but I think he's going to take the lead there. I'm really excited to see with that explosive offense what he can do with other weapons on the offense where they can't just key on him. I'm not saying he's this player, but he has similar skill set, I believe, to Alvin Kamara, who ended up at Tennessee. In the NFL, he's been able to run the ball, between the tackles, but also is very lethal out of the backfield receiving-wise. I think the NFL is really moving towards wanting running backs to be able to do both, and I think he is really explosive and could do that. I don't think Gibbs can catch Bijan Robinson just because Bijan is just the better overall running back, kind of that can go all three downs. But Gibbs, I really like. It'll be interesting what he does in Alabama and his size going into next year into the draft. Third is Travion Henderson. Many people have him as two. He looked great as a freshman last year at Ohio State. Showed his explosion and then showed that he could also be the lead back there. The offense is going to be explosive yet again, and he's just going to continue to put up stats. Want to see him be a little more consistent, but I think that's more of them just giving him the ball more. Just like Gibbs, he's explosive out of the backfield as well. Then we have our first quarterback, Bryce Young at 4, out of Alabama. He won the Heisman last year. He played amazing, looked very good. A couple of things I want to see for him is just how he's going to do with the new receivers as they've lost John Mechie and James Williams from last year. And also you saw, that championship game in Georgia, he made some bad decisions, even though he was missing a couple of his receivers. I want to see how, he kind of does, progresses and if he can keep that up with new weapons for Alabama. In Ohio State, obviously a great team, great offense. So they actually have 3 in the top 6. 5 is C.J. Stroud. He had a very good first year starting last year, really came on strong at the end of the year. Struggled early, but really showed everything. Although he's losing Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, he still has number 6, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka. That offense is going to keep going. The main things I want to see with him is he going to use his legs a little bit more? He looked a little hesitant at times. And then also him improving in the pocket, with pressure. Then Jackson Smith-Njigba. Right now, he's my wide receiver 1, but that's kind of fluid for me, depending on if Kayshon Boutte's injury, heals and he comes back. And then also my wide receiver 3, which will be, I believe, next 10, Quentin Johnson. If he has a big year, I think he could possibly catch Jackson Smith-Njigba too. I don't know if Njigba, how he promotes or how it translates to NFL. I think he's more of a slot receiver because he hasn't really played that at Ohio State. But if he's able to show that, then obviously could move up, boards in the NFL and also stay number 1. 7, Kayshon Boutte. I'm a little worried with Brian Kelly going to LSU, how that's really going to, translate with his injury. But he's shown that he's special on the field and that he can, do similar things to, wide receiver like Jamar Chase, just dominate games on the outside. Now here's so next is for the 2023 season. Right now, who I have as running back 3, Zach Evans. He went to TCU. He's shown flashes. There's been some possible question marks, not really like off the field, but just he had a weird recruitment with Georgia. There was some rumors came out that he wanted to limit his carries to help himself when he gets to NFL. So Zach Evans is at Ole Miss, which is nice because there's some other running backs there that can share the time, and Lane Kiffin really does a good job of help highlighting the best assets of the player. That offense should be good, so he should be able to show that. Zach Evans isn't going to have great production as some of the other backs in 2023, so it's going to mainly be like the traits in the film that you can see performing to the next level. Next is Sean Tucker, who could take over Zach Evans this year, possibly. Tucker is the kind of the opposite of Evans. We've seen the production. We've seen him do it at Syracuse. They were stat the boxes, and he would still have do that. You can catch the ball. It's very fast. I think with another year, and if Evans doesn't really come out strong with Ole Miss, he could jump Evans eventually. And then at 10, I have Tank Bigsby. After his freshman year, he was pretty high at Auburn by many. Last year, he struggled on the under new coaching staff, and there was questions possibly about him having some injuries. So this is a big year for him to bounce back to try to move up to maybe 4 or 3. But right now, he's running back 5. As you can see in 2023 running back class, even running back 5 or Tank Bigsby, a lot of talent in that class. That's why many people have been in fantasy talking about trading for those 2023 rookie picks. All right, here is Quentin Johnson, number 11 from TCU. Kind of the same things with Zach Evans, with just, showing flashes. Last year against Oklahoma, he looked great. And then there's other games where he's had injuries or bad quarterback play, whichever one you look at, and it hasn't really shown up. So last year he had 4 games under 50 yards, and then the other he had against Baylor and Oklahoma, the 2 top teams they played. He had over 100 yards. He had a touchdown in both of those games. He shows his ability. He can play outside. That's one of the reasons why I think he could catch Jackson Smith and Jigba, is just because he's more dynamic on the outside, more of a possible potential of being an alpha receiver. He can he's 6'4". He can go get the ball, get it to him in space. He makes a lot of great plays. He just needs to get more consistency to be able to do that. Next is Xavier Worthy, who will be eligible in 2024. Last year at Texas, he showed a lot of what he can do. So with Quinn Ewers there, hopefully he can continue to put up those big numbers. Next is Will Shipley, running back for Clemson. He had a pretty good freshman season last year. Was hurt some games, but he took the role right back when he came back into the lineup. Clemson's struggling with offense based on the quarterback play, but they're going to depend on Will Shipley, and he can go out. He's one of those other running backs that's good out of the backfield. Still can run between the tackles, but I'd like to see how he progresses in that Clemson offense this year. Next is Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, tight end at 14. Usually I don't put tight ends that high, but he's by far the best tight end, and I think he could be a first-round pick in next year. He can block. He's a good pass catcher. He's kind of the total package, so I like him a lot. And I don't know if there's really much more he can do at Notre Dame. I mean, we've seen the tape for 2 years. Just continue that progress. And then the next, there's the two top quarterbacks in Stroud and Bryce Young. And then, there's kind of a toss up for all the other quarterbacks right now. The next one I put at 15 is Caleb Williams, quarterback. He went to Oklahoma last year for his freshman year, looked very well, took over from Rattler, but then still had some struggles. But he went with Lincoln Riley to USC. So I'm very interested to see him, in that open style, if he can continue to progress. Actually, I think this was before I put this on before the transfer. Jordan Addison won the Blitnikoff last year. A lot of people say that's why Cody Pickett was so good, because of Addison. He transferred from Pittsburgh to USC, so he'll be paired with Caleb Williams. A lot of people really like him. He's, I think, wide receiver 4 in 2023 for me so far. He's shown a lot of what he did at Pittsburgh. He'll probably get more eyes on him at USC, but the Pac-12 defenses aren't, that much better than ACC. So I don't know how much more we'll really see from him, but he just needs to keep up his production. And next is Jermaine Burton, wide receiver. And he played at Georgia the last couple of years. The Georgia offense doesn't really get the ball downfield that much, so he's going to Alabama. Alabama's brought in a couple transfer receivers. So this one's interesting to me because I think Jermaine Burton's very talented, very fast. It's going to be on the outside. So if he can, mesh with Bryce Young, could he have a Jameson Williams type year with that Bama wide receiver bump, move up to, round one? I think possibly. So he's someone I would definitely be looking at this coming year to see how he kind of develops. And then next is Josh Downs, who's another talented wide receiver that will be in 2023 in North Carolina. Sam Howell's gone, so a new quarterback, but he was the only option last year, and he played very well. So it'll be interesting how the NFL looks at him, because they have not really North Carolina receivers have not fared well in the draft as of late, but he is by far the most talented, so it'll be interesting with him. This is the next player. Raheem Sanders is a player that I just recently watched some more tape on, and I found that I really liked him. Running back from Arkansas, had a good freshman year last year, shows some power, then shows some good speed and, vision, and able to cut in and out. I want to see, how he does in this Arkansas offense this coming year, because they lose Treylon Burks, who was such a big part of their offense. So, but they do still have KJ Jefferson, who's great, kind of read option type quarterback, elusive. So that kind of helps Sanders. Mostly runs out of the shotgun, so we'll have to see how that translates to NFL. But I think he definitely has very good upside to kind of move into that third wide receiver, third running back in 2023 behind Shipley and TreVeyon Henderson. And number 20, this is really based on potential and just what I kind of saw in the spring game for Florida. Anthony Richardson, quarterback. Last year, he showed signs with his athleticism, but wasn't really a quarterback, just like athlete, that was throwing the ball. In the spring game, he looked very good. If he could stay healthy, I think he has a high ceiling and could move up to that quarterback 3 for the 2023 draft. So it would be interesting how he does with Billy Napier in Florida, the new coaching staff. So many people have Braylon Allen, running back from Wisconsin, higher. I'm still a little bit wait and see. He did have a very good year last year as a freshman. He was only 17. So, but he did not play very much against Penn State and Michigan, the two best defenses, and he really took advantage of some poor defenses. I think. I kind of just want to see him a full year this next year in Wisconsin to see how that really works. I think he benefited from some bad tackling on some bad Big Ten defenses, which that's not his fault. I want to see him kind of get a little better in vision. I think he kind of runs upright a little bit, but obviously very talented running back and very young. So interested to see how he really improves. Next is Spencer Rattler. He's fallen from grace, but I still think he has a chance at South Carolina to kind of remake his image. I don't think he can be a top 5 quarterback like he was projected early on last year, but I still think there's some weapons at South Carolina where he can kind of rebuild his image. So he also like Richardson is possibility for that quarterback 3 of the 2023 class. Next, we have 3 2023 running backs that have some questions for the next level. Kendall Milton, I think he looks like he has the skills for the NFL. He's dealt with injuries, the crowded backfield at Georgia. I thought he looked pretty good coming off the injury. In the spring game, he had a nice catch too, where he was able to bounce off someone and spin and go into the end zone. He should lead that backfield, and I'm expecting very big things for Milton this year if he could stay healthy. And I think if he has a strong year, he could definitely move up the ranks of the running backs. Next is a player that many might not know, but Israel Abekananda. I'm sure I said that wrong. He's at Pittsburgh. The problem with him is just that Pittsburgh platoons quite a bit. The running backs, he doesn't get a ton of carries, but he's a good receiver on the backfield. He's strong at the line. He's a good runner. I'm hoping that with Kenny Pickett gone and Keaton Slovis in there, losing Addison, that they'll run the ball more. Next, we have a pair of Michigan running backs. Blake Corum is the more productive one so far. His freshman year was disappointing. Michigan kind of got it together last year, and then he had a very good season. Some questions about his size, but I think he is tougher than his size gives him. But against good defenses, he did have some struggles going up the middle, and he dealt with an injury. So he will most likely be the lead back. I would say probably, get 55, 60% of the carries. One thing, since he's a smaller back, that I wish he was better at was receiving. He needs to work on that. But I don't know if he will get that chance because Donovan Edwards, the talented freshman that came in last year, really didn't do much other than the Maryland game where he had 170 yards receiving. In the spring game, it looked like they were going to line him out wide a lot more in the slot. I think he'll be more of the James Cook type role from Georgia last year, a lot of passing work and, get rushing work too. So I could see Corum getting around 60, Edwards around 30, 35% of the carries. But he'll be very involved in the passing game. Now, 27 is Malik Cunningham, a quarterback that I'm very excited to watch how he progresses this year. And yet another one that could be up for that quarterback 3 of 2023. I thought he had a very good year last year. He throws the deep ball very well. They've gotten a couple of transfer receivers coming in that should really help him. Tyon Evans, transfer from Tennessee, another pass catching running back, and he's very elusive, good runner with the ball. The one thing is he needs to work on his accuracy and reading defenses, but I think he can do that. I think he's much more polished than Malik Willis was last year. Plays better competition, so I'll be very interested. If he has a very strong season, where he'll kind of be looked at NFL wise. He is a little bit on the older side, so that is against him. We have our Nets tight end, Georgia tight end Brock Bowers came in very strong last year. A mismatch, some question, his size and, his blocking ability at the Nets level, but he's a great receiver. And then now we finally get to Quinn Ewers, quarterback. He went to Ohio State last year, then transferred to Texas. He's good. Most people were raving about him. He hasn't been on the field, but, the Texas has a lot of weapons, so we'll have to wait and see. But he definitely could be one of the top quarterbacks in that 2024 class. So I'm interested to see if he can kind of get Texas over that hump where they've looked, good at times, but, at times then they fall flat on their face. All right, and then 30th is Marvin Harrison Jr. I mentioned him earlier. He's going to kind of play outside. I've from some reviews of spring and some practice tapes. He looks really good, really smooth in and out of breaks. And very strong and physical. So yet again, Ohio State has a strong receiving core. This is a kind of a sleeper. He's not turning into as much of a sleeper. People are starting to look at him, but Devin Leary, quarterback out of NC State, I think he could be the next Kenny Pickett and rise to, maybe a first-round draft pick. But the difference with him is he will have multiple years of really productive, great, efficient play, whereas Kenny Pickett only had one last year. He had a very good year, so I'm very interested to see how he'll do at NC State this coming year. Next, we have freshman, my top wide receiver in this freshman class, Luther Burden. He went to Missouri, so that makes me a little leery of that, just because of Missouri not really producing that talent or having that explosive offenses. But I think he's so good, such a good wide receiver coming out, and they have some quarterbacks coming into Missouri. I'm really excited to see him. Next is Zay Flowers. He's going to be a 4-year player coming back. So maybe, before last season, a lot of people were wondering about Olave with coming back for a senior season, if he'd still get the draft capital, and we showed he did. So maybe the same with Flowers. He had a down year last year because his quarterback, Phil Jerkovich, was hurt a lot of the year. So maybe getting that back together at Boston College, he can have another great year. Next is Devin Achane, running back from Texas A&M. Him and Spiller shared the backfield last year. He's a more explosive, smaller back, but I think the NFL has shown, with James Cook going high in the second round, that you don't necessarily have the prototypical size. So as him being, what I'm thinking, the lead back, even though Texas A&M has some other good backs coming in, he'll get a little bit bigger workload, and want to see what he can do this year. Next is a player that a lot of people in the Devy community very excited about, in Nate Singleton. He's going to Penn State. So Penn State really hasn't had strong running backs since Saquon Barkley, but he has a chance to play pretty early and show all of his skills. So I'm excited to see what he could do at Penn State in the next couple of years. Then we have Evan Stewart, my second freshman wide receiver, goes to Texas A&M. A little worried Texas A&M doesn't really produce the receivers. Mainly Jimbo Fisher hasn't really done great with the receivers, but he is a lot of people that I really trust within the Devy community have talked about his how sophisticated his route running is already, so they think he'll be fine there. So I would like to see how he does in the SEC, where the defenses are better. Then we have another interesting one in Dante Demas Jr. at Maryland. A lot of people thought Raheem Jarrett was going to be the main wide receiver last year at Maryland, but Dante Demas, through 6 or 7 games, was leading the team. He was really, that offense was high-powered, and once he got hurt on a kick return, Maryland's offense and their team kind of fell apart. So if he can come back healthy, I'm interested what he can do. He could be one of those other late risers, kind of, like a Olave or some of those players. There's talk he could be a second or third round last year. So if he comes back healthy and has another good year, maybe he could, sneak up into late first. And next is one of the top freshman quarterbacks, I think, in Drew Aller. At Penn State, it looks like he won't start right away because of Sean Clifford, but he might play halfway through the year or next year. Him and Singleton should be, a good combo. And my only question is the coaching at Penn State, but hopefully, they can figure that out with Aller. But he's a quarterback to kind of look at. And we have another quarterback at Tyler Van Dyke at Miami. He played very well last year. I didn't necessarily think he would get the job. I thought it would be Garcia, but my only question is with Gaddis coming from Michigan, that offense at Miami is probably not going to be as pass heavy, so he might not get all the opportunities. So he might not be able to move up the board as much. Got another Penn State player here at 40 with Parker Washington. He had, I believe, around 800 yards last year, even with Jahan Dotson taking up a lot of the target share. So I'm very interested to see what he does this year at offense. I know Sean Clifford's still there, but I think as Dotson showed last year, even with Clifford, you can put up that good production. All right, and here's the final 10 for this episode of the Top 50. Now we have Raheem Jarrett from Maryland. He's a very boomer bust type player. He ever either has really good games or he disappears. He really has not shown, that he can be consistent. So that's the biggest thing for him, consistency. He has a skill set. He just needs to show up week in and week out. Another great Ohio State receiver, Emeka Egbuka. He's going to be that third wide receiver there. But you've seen last year with Jackson Smith and Jigba, 3 wide receivers can thrive at Ohio State. So interested to see how he performs this year. And then the following year, he should take over one of those top 2 slots. Next is Branson Robinson, running back from Georgia. It'll be interesting how Georgia uses him because they use a lot of backs in their backfield, but they have a lot of backs. But I think he's just too good to see out the field. You might not see huge production, but just keep an eye on him to see what he can do. And then in 2023, he'll take a bigger role, but I think he could be a very special player for Georgia. And then I have Zach Charbonnet at 44. He went to Michigan, transferred to UCLA. He had a great year at UCLA last year. I don't really get the decision to come back to school because he's coming back in a much harder running back class to, move up. I think he probably could have gone maybe 3rd round this past year. I'm not big on Charbonnet. I think he has good straight line speed. He's a good back. But I don't know if he has the elusiveness and, kind of lateral ability that it takes for the NFL. But he definitely could be a committee back in the NFL. Next, we have Jadon Blue at Texas. I don't know how much he's going to get at Texas this year with Bijan there, but he definitely will slot in 2023. And he's very talented. He did set out his senior year in high school. Next is LJ Johnson Jr. at Texas A&M. He's one of those talented backs I said coming in that Achane could be sharing time with, but as a freshman, I would think Achane would take most of that. Next, we have a couple. Well, we finished with 3 out of 4 quarterbacks that, I have question marks. A lot of people are really talking up Will Levis. He transferred from Penn State to Kentucky. I didn't think he would be a good starter at all at Kentucky, so he did definitely exceed those expectations. And a lot of people are talking him up, but he had some poor games last year, and he depended on Wan'Dale Robinson quite a bit. So they are, with Wan'Dale gone, I'm interested to see if he takes that next step, is able to become more accurate, and just without the constant targets to Wan'Dale where he could just break tackles and make people miss. See what he can do this year. I'm kind of changed my opinion. I was a lot lower on him before. I still think he's, some mocks are saying he's, a top 10 pick. I'm not ready to see that. Maybe he could sneak it in the end of the first, but we saw mobile quarterbacks that, with accuracy issues like a Malik Willis drop to the 3rd round. So he might be more of a 2nd round guy. Then we have Jackson Dart. He was hyped up at USC, went to Ole Miss, struggled some in the spring game. But most people are hoping with Lane Kiffin that he can really produce and get some of that draft capital up. Personally, I'm not totally sure on Dart. Some of these Devy quarterbacks, I would say, if they have a strong start this season, maybe midway through, very good, I would try to maybe trade those for some other, Devy assets that are closer to the NFL or that are actually in the NFL because you know what they are, whereas Devy quarterbacks we've seen this last year. You really never know because we thought Sam Howell and Spencer Rattler were guaranteed top 10 picks. And then running out, we got Deuce Vaughn, a running back from Kansas State. He's very productive in college. He's very shifty, but he is smaller. So we'll have to see what the NFL really thinks about him. But as we've seen, they like those players that are good in space. So he might have a role, in the NFL. And then lastly, Brennan Armstrong from Virginia. My worry, though, is Tony Elliott from Clemson, the offensive coordinator, went to be Virginia's head coach. So what will that do to that offense? Because as we've seen, that Clemson offense has kind of regressed and does not look nearly as good. So that is our top 50, or that is my top 50 Devy rankings right now. I'll have the link in the comments of the video of my full list, and we'll have 51 through 100. Remember to subscribe to the IDP Guys YouTube channel. Lots of great content in there. You know, we have some mock drafts and different other videos, and just make sure to follow and comment and what you think about these Devy rankings. So I'll see you next week with rankings 51 through 100.